Donald Trump pled not guilty to federal charges in Miami yesterday. The former president is accused of keeping and hiding top secret information. The FBI found over 100 classified documents last year at his Florida home. Now, it's illegal to mishandle or willfully steal classified information, which is supposed to be kept in guarded government facilities. Trump is the first former president to face federal criminal charges. He's also facing state charges in a New York investigation. Over 330,000 immigrants will be able to renew their U.S. work permits. The U.S. extended temporary protective status for 18 more months to thousands of people from El Salvador, Honduras, and Nepal, reversing a Trump policy. Temporary protected status covers people who have been in the U.S. for years. They are also eligible for driver's licenses and Social Security cards. Republicans who have leaped to former President Donald Trump's defense over his handling of classified documents are using his indictment to escalate attacks against what they say is a politicized and weaponized Department of Justice and a corrupt FBI. They are discussing a wide range of ideas from funding cuts to investigating the DOJ's investigation. And in the Senate, one idea is blocking votes on most DOJ nominees because of Trump's indictment. Meanwhile, some Republicans are quietly saying the federal indictment is serious and could cause problems for the party. Those Republicans acknowledge privately that the federal charges that Trump faces for his past presidency handling of classified documents are far more serious than the earlier ones around hush money payments before the 2016 election. The Southern Baptist Convention, a denomination that is often a bellwether for evangelical America, has expelled 5 churches from the convention this year over their appointment of women as pastors. The move to enforce a strict ban against women in church leadership comes as some evangelicals fear a liberal drift in their congregations and a departure from Scripture. The Republican-led House is expected to consider a measure today that would censure Representative Adam B. Schiff for pressing allegations that former President Donald Trump's 2016 campaign colluded with Russia. The resolution also seeks to fine Schiff, the former House Intelligence Committee chairman, $16 million, which its sponsor, Representative Anna Luna, says is half the cost of an investigation into the alleged collusion. 5 years after Democrats came close to unseating Republican Senator Ted Cruz in Texas, a group of strategists has launched the Lose Cruz Super PAC. Backed by 7-figure funding, the Super PAC will try to drive anti-Cruz messaging through rapid response with ads online and on television. A new report claims that billionaire Tyler Perry negotiated a deal to buy the BET Media Group from parent company Paramount Global for an undisclosed amount. This deal would give Perry complete control over BET Media Group as well as VH1. Speculation of a buyout came as funding for several BET projects was pulled last week, including some in Atlanta, the home of Tyler Perry Studios. This is Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. We are in hour 2 of the show, and in this hour, we go behind the headlines and dig deeper on the stories that people are talking about. And since Donald Trump was just indicted yesterday, becoming the first former president to ever be federally indicted, we are going to talk about Donald Trump because that's what everyone is talking about. These federal indictments, what they mean. And today we're going to focus on how Donald Trump is handling the indictments. We saw him jump in that motorcade yesterday, leave that Miami courthouse, make a couple of stops at a grocery store, then a restaurant before he got on a plane and went back to New Jersey to actually do a campaign rally. Does all of that suggest that Donald Trump is unfazed by this federal indictment, an indictment that if he is convicted of those charges, even half of the 37 charges, he could spend the rest of his life in prison? So the average person, after leaving an arraignment where they had to enter a plea, where they had to face the Department of Justice and FBI agents and lawyers representing the government, would probably go home. Some might go home, have a drink. Others might go home and get under the covers and, pull the blanket over their faces. Others might go to a church and pray, but very few would get in a motorcade, lead entourage to the streets of Florida, end up with lots of stops, and then go do a campaign rally. We're going to talk to a body language expert in this hour about what does Trump's body language really say about how he's feeling? Also, what does the body language of some of his Republican supporters tell us about what they really think of these charges? And later in the show, we're going to talk to a presidential historian. He's going to help us put in perspective the significance of these charges against Donald Trump and the other investigations that could lead to additional charges. Did the founding fathers anticipate ever having someone like Donald Trump run for and win the presidency? When we come forward, more on the story everyone is talking about, Donald J. Trump and his indictment, right here on KBLA Talk 1580.
If you're not listening to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings on KBLA Talk 1580, you're missing out. Everybody wants to talk to Tavis.
That's one reason, by the way, why I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with you today. The three people I always most hoped would interview me were Phil Donahue, Studs Terkel, and Tavis Smiley. Donahue's retired, Terkel's deceased, so this is a real thrill for me. And the reason why I have such respect for what you do is you have a historically informed conversation of depth and detail.
Be sure to tune in to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings, 9 a.m. to 12 noon on your unapologetically progressive radio station, KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580.
Is the pen mightier than the sword?
They say the pen is mightier than the sword. At KBLA Talk 1580, we not only have a lot to talk about, we have a lot to write about. Politics, relationships, business, empowerment, and culture. The all-star roster at KBLA Talk 1580 has you covered.
That's what it's all about.
Be sure to follow us on all our socials for our latest book releases, op-eds, essays, and commentaries from our hosts. And, of course, download the KBLA 1580 app as we strive to remain your most trusted, credible, and reliable source for the issues you care about. This is unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
What up, baby? I'm young, gifted, and black.
KBLA Talk 1580, we do more than just talk.
Hey there, I'm Jared Hill, president of the National Association of Black Journalists of Los Angeles, and I just want to say thank you for the benevolent $10,000 donation and scholarships for the next generation of black journalists.
And I'm Haywood Galbraith, photojournalist and founder of the Minority Photojournalism Institute. Thanks, KBLA, for your generous $10,000 scholarship gift to help us train the next generation of black photojournalists.
Congratulations to all the students who will benefit from the scholarship dollars raised at our Black History Month luncheon, honoring black legends in LA media. When we come forward at KBLA Talk 1580, we're bringing everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us.
Access granted.
In a survey conducted by the public opinion research firm Eviderus, KBLA Talk 1580 consistently emerged as the station of choice for black audiences in the Los Angeles media market and beyond. The survey also revealed that the vast majority of black audiences are concerned about the lack of black-owned media and are more likely to listen to talk radio that focuses on issues that impact the black community. For some reason, the other talk stations haven't quite figured that out.
If you think about KFI, well, KFI only has like a 3% black listenership. 3%. So there's a good 97%.
Donald Trump is twice impeached, now twice indicted. And if that wasn't enough, he is also facing at least 2 other criminal investigations and another civil trial involving E. Jean Carroll, who has already won a $5 million verdict against him. But none of this has stopped Donald Trump from portraying himself as a victim rather than a perpetrator. On Tuesday night, he leaned harder into this narrative that he is being targeted unfairly and undemocratically by political enemies bent on stopping his agenda. But as Trump campaigns for yet another term in the White House, he can't escape the prospect that he could end up with a term in prison, and that could be a very lengthy prison term. In court on Tuesday, Donald Trump didn't speak any words. He was 20 feet away from special counsel Jack Smith, but his attorney entered a not guilty plea on his behalf. And we saw Trump, or at least we were told that Trump sat at times with his arms crossed and his jaw set. By the time he appeared on stage later that night in New Jersey, he was clearly in combat mode. What does all of, Trump's language and his body language tell us about what he's really thinking about his legal jeopardy and the predicament that he finds himself in? Here to help us understand Trump's language and body language is Traci Brown. She is a body language expert. Welcome to the show, Traci.
Hey, Areva, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's start. We're going to analyze a couple of folks in this next segment, but let's start with Donald Trump. He's acting as if, he just won the lottery or something. Nothing phases him. He's in the courthouse, obviously upset, arms crossed and jaw set. What does that tell you? Let's start with that. That's what we're getting the reports from him. Reports from that courtroom is that he was sitting there with his arms crossed and his jaw set.
Well, we always have to consider the context whenever we're talking about body language and put together a list of possibilities of what could be going on. There's no one movement that absolutely means one thing. So typically when people cross their arms, it depends how hard they cross their arms. And I'd like to see that picture. I know they're not always forthcoming with pictures from the courtroom. If he's just crossing them, just kind of lightly, it could mean that he's protecting himself from what's outside of him. It could also mean that he's closed to what's going on. I would guess, just based on what's going on, it's probably a little bit of both. If he's hugging himself really tightly, and you can pick that out when you see, like if you can see like the whites of someone's knuckles, that's how you know that they may be squeezing themselves really tight. They can be hugging themselves for comfort, because they're really nervous. So we may have a mix of all of that going on. Now, when someone sets their jaw, that means it kind of shows that they're set in their mindset. And I would guess that Trump is set in his mindset. he has his way that he thinks. And so he's not going to bend from that, no matter what goes on in the courtroom.
Okay, let's move on to him jumping in this motorcade. He makes a couple of stops. He ends up in New Jersey at a campaign rally on a stage. Mm-hmm. And the reports are, I didn't see the rally, but the reports are that he was in combat mode. I mean, he was, again, spewing a bunch of lies about the election, about him being targeted, him, being a political, victim, that Joe Biden is going after him, and this is all about election interference and the Democrats' efforts to stop him from winning the election. What do you make of this combat mode that he was in?
I think it's the same thing we've seen from him since day one. He is continually in combat mode. He is continually a victim. And what that does is throw everyone off the scent of the truth, because when you're a victim, well, the whole world's against you. Clearly, that's the case, right? So, what I did see from him, though, at some of his rallies, because he did make several stops, is that whenever he said indictment, his chin went down. And when our chin goes down like this, we're protecting our really vital area right here in our neck. So he knows he's got something to protect himself from. He's not immune to what's going on around him. He's choosing to mostly ignore it. However, the body can't lie. And it's showing that he's got some real emotion under there.
Yeah, I want to show you a clip, and you'll be able to both see it and hear it, of Donald Trump. And this is, again, after the court appearance in Florida yesterday. Let's roll that clip.
Espionage Act has been used to go after traitors and spies. It has nothing to do with a former president legally keeping his own documents. As president, the law that applies to this case is not the Espionage Act, but very simply the Presidential Records Act, which is not even mentioned in this ridiculous 44-page indictment. Under the Presidential Records Act, which is civil, not criminal, I had every right to have these documents.
So here you have Donald Trump playing lawyer and giving his rendition of the law. All wrong, folks. Everything he just said, completely false. He's not a lawyer. Obviously, is cherry picking pieces of federal statute that fits his narrative. Again, trying to claim that he's done nothing wrong, that everybody else is to be blamed, that he's being targeted, that the Espionage Act was never written to be used against a former president that keeps documents the way he kept documents. What did you make of, again, looking at that clip, listening to Donald Trump in that moment? Traci, what do you make of it?
Well, what I got out of that is that he was showing threat, that he is a threat. And he did that when he said espionage. And he said espionage, like his lips are back and he's showing his teeth. So he said that a couple times when he talked about the specific act in question. He was showing his teeth. It's no different than a dog showing their teeth. That's a threat. And that's that's his brand. And he's fully embracing that right now as we see him.
All right. I want to talk about some of the folks that are defending Donald Trump. So we know there are, lots of Republicans who've come out to defend him, to say that this is a weaponization of the Department of Justice, that it's the political, the FBI has been politicized, and that this is all pretty much one big witch hunt targeted at Donald Trump because he's so amazing and so great, and that Democrats are so, intimidated and afraid of him that we have to figure out a way to bring him down. I want to show you a show, and we'll listen to a clip from one of his defenders, Senator Lindsey Graham. Let's roll that clip.
Well, here's what I believe. We live in an America where if you're the Democratic candidate for president, Hillary Clinton, Secretary of State, you can set up a private server in your basement to conduct government business. And when an investigation is had about your activity, no, let me finish.
But you didn't answer the question.
That was ridiculous. Well, yeah, I'm trying to answer the question from a Republican point of view. That may not be acceptable on the
All right, Lindsey's getting heated there, yelling at the host, saying, "Nah, let me finish." So what do you make, Traci, of Lindsey Graham and his defense of Donald Trump and his comparison to Hillary Clinton?
Well, here's what got cut out of that clip, because you all sent it to me this afternoon. The question was to Lindsey Graham, do you believe President Trump did nothing wrong? And Lindsey Graham did not answer that. That is a yes or no question. And so he just started talking about Hillary Clinton. And then when asked about, hey, could you just answer the question? He got angry to a level that did not match the situation. Like he's irate to the point of it doesn't match at all. And whenever you get, we were looking for hotspots here. We're looking for hotspots that could be tells of deception, like little signs. And two of the big ones are, one, not answering a yes or no question, and the other is unprovoked or unreasonable anger based on the situation. So what that means is that he likely does believe Trump did something wrong, and it's all right there in this little short clip.
So you're saying when someone doesn't want to answer a question because they may agree with the question that's being posed, one way to respond is to have this disproportionate anger response.
That's exactly right. That's the perfect word. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. We see that often. And then he started to berate the program. This may not be what you want to hear on this program, blah, blah, blah. So that makes a lot of sense. And that way he gets to deflect. So he never really gets to answer the question now, right? Because he's in this total sidebar. Now we're arguing about, you may not want to hear what I have to say. I'm a Republican, blah, blah, blah. And he never gets around to answering that question, or at least.
Yeah, it's what he believes. Like, do you believe it or do you not? And he goes, well, I'm trying to use this point of view. No one asked about your point of view. It's what do you believe? It's a yes or no question. And he totally went against.
Yeah, Traci, he brings that point of view up as if there's a Republican yes or no, and there's a Democratic yes or no, there's an independent yes or no. It's just a yes or no. It doesn't have a party affiliation. All right. Moving on. Let's talk about Miss Kari Lake. Miss Kari Lake is a very skilled media person. She spent most of her professional career as an anchor on television in Arizona. She ran for office. She lost. She contested her own loss, said that it was, fraudulent voting happened, that somehow the election was rigged. And she's been a fierce supporter of Donald Trump. In fact, she made some statement before the court hearing that, basically, if you want to get to Donald Trump, you're going to have to come through his supporters, including her. Let's roll a clip of what she has had to say about Donald Trump and this federal indictment.
I think people are going to rally around President Trump. We know that our elections are corrupt here. They've been corrupt for a long time, 2020. We saw what happened when we ignored a corrupt election and allowed someone like Joe Biden to get into the White House and lead our country into destruction. And I believe
you can look down the camera and say that, but that's not true. You know that the election was not stolen.
I wouldn't expect you coming from Australia to know one damn thing
from the UK.
Country. Oh, you're from the UK. I was told you were from Australia.
Okay, so you'd speak to someone who is on the right of politics, but not to an independent journalist.
I expect you to understand what's happening in our country, because I can see you come at this from a left agenda, which is very typical of the fake news. And the people aren't listening to you. They really aren't. And you don't understand what it means to shed blood for your freedom, like we did here when we broke ourselves free from a tyrant called King George. So when you learn a little bit about our history, then I'll have a conversation, but you don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Woo! Ouch! 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 Kari, girlfriend, tone it down. Okay, Traci. Whew. What about Miss Lake?
Let's bring it back to the Revolutionary War, shall we? I mean, that answers all our questions.
Oh my God. I have not seen that clip myself. So I don't like your question. Now I'm going to berate you. I'm going to basically call you ignorant. Say you don't know your history. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't understand our struggle as poor, victimized white people in this country. So what is Kari Lake talking about, Traci?
Well, here's the thing. Clearly, she's at first she's playing to the camera, right? She wasn't looking at the interviewer, and she's really good at it. And she's very compelling. And here's the thing. Here's where her emotion is at, and that is superiority and looking down on others. And I got that because when she talked about the elections being corrupt in 2020, her chin went up just a little bit. She juts her chin up, again, exposing the neck, right, where Trump hid his when he was talking about indictments. And that's where her head is totally at. And then she just deflects, and all of a sudden, the redcoats are coming, and and then she walks off.
Yeah, and this is a thing that's so typical. These Republican talking points about the election being corrupt and rigged is such a weird argument. And it's only corrupt and, fake when they lose.
Exactly. And when they win, though, it works out fine.
Yes, when they win, it's the American people, standing up for, Christian values and, the values of the Republican Party. But when they lose, it's corrupt. And then she goes on to say Joe Biden, leading the country into this horrible place. And this reporter on the spot, Traci, fact checks her. She wasn't prepared for that. Do you think her response, I saw what you described earlier, this disproportionate anger. I mean, she goes from like 0 to 10 in a couple of seconds.
She holds it together in, I think, a pretty elegant way, whereas Lindsey Graham just went off the rails. It was just unreasonable. And again, she went into deflecting. And that's the only defense that the Trump group, the folks that like Trump, seem to resonate with. And you know what? For knowing your market, she's got it nailed. For truth, maybe otherwise. Okay, so the marketing of the Trump brand is they found their audience, and they know their messaging, and they're all picking it up, and it works as good as it works, and we'll see as we move forward. But the emotions and the body language are revealed as to what's really behind what's going on. So, with any politician, they think, they're hiding things and hiding deception and how they're really feeling about things other than anger generally. But it's all there when we look.
Yeah, you're right. She stuck to the talking points, and she's very skilled at getting out those talking points. And then the conversation is over. So she didn't give him an opportunity to ask her any other questions or to make any other comments. So I say what I have to say. I call you fake news because you won't agree with my lies and my deception. And then I walk away. And that seems to be right again out of Donald Trump's playbook, and we see so many of his supporters use that very same tactic, deflect, get upset, yell, condescend, and then walk away. Well, Traci, thank you for helping us break down what's happening with these Republicans as they try to, defend the indefensible, and as they contort themselves into pretzels almost, trying to defend Donald Trump. Particularly, we know privately many of them believe that these are very serious allegations, and he has some very serious legal issues that could not only hurt him, send him to jail, but could also hurt the party. Again, Traci Brown, body language expert, thank you for joining. When we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580, we're going to talk to a presidential historian who's going to help us put into context what the founding fathers may be thinking or would have been thinking about Donald Trump and his legal issues. Stay with us right here on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is a rather bold pronouncement, but we think we can back it up. If you come across a radio frequency anywhere putting more variety and more diversity on the air than KBLA Talk 1580, we sure would like to hear about your discovery. You got to have vision. You can search, but we are confident that you won't find more shows covering more topics, hosted by a more diverse and inclusive lineup of talkers than the squad we have assembled here at KBLA Talk 1580.
This is the time, brothers. This is the time.
We've got something for everybody. That's right. Health and healing, history and humor, issues and events, empowerment and entertainment, all in one station.
What's really going on?
Free enterprise, you dig? KBLA Talk 1580.
Yes.
Oh yeah. We got a lot to talk about.
King Kong ain't got on me.
If you're not listening to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings on KBLA Talk 1580, you're missing out. Everybody wants to talk to Tavis.
That's one reason, by the way, why I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with you today. The three people I always most hoped would interview me were Phil Donahue, Studs Terkel, and Tavis Smiley. Donahue's retired, Terkel's deceased, so this is a real thrill for me. And the reason why I have such respect for what you do is you have a historically informed conversation of depth and detail.
Be sure to tune in to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings, 9 a.m. to 12 noon on your unapologetically progressive radio station, KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580.
Is the pen mightier than the sword?
They say the pen is mightier than the sword. At KBLA Talk 1580, we not only have a lot to talk about, we have a lot to write about. Politics, relationships, business, empowerment, and culture. The all-star roster at KBLA Talk 1580 has you covered.
That's what it's all about.
Be sure to follow us on all our socials for our latest book releases, op-eds, essays, and commentaries from our hosts. And, of course, download the KBLA 1580 app as we strive to remain your most trusted, credible, and reliable source for the issues you care about. This is unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
What up, baby?
I'm young, gifted, and black.
At KBLA Talk 1580, We do more than just talk.
Hey there, I'm Jared Hill, president of the National Association of Black Journalists of Los Angeles, and I just want to say thank you for the benevolent $10,000 donation and scholarships for the next generation of Black journalists.
And I'm Haywood Galbraith, photojournalist and founder of the Minority Photojournalism Institute. Thanks, KBLA, for your generous $10,000 scholarship gift to help us train the next generation of Black photojournalists.
Congratulations to all the students who will benefit from the scholarship dollars raised at our Black History Month luncheon, honoring Black legends in LA media. When we come forward at KBLA Talk 1580, we're bringing everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us.
Connection established. Access granted.
In a survey conducted by the public opinion research firm Eviderus, KBLA Talk 1580 consistently emerged as the station of choice for Black audiences in the Los Angeles media market and beyond. The survey also revealed that the vast majority of Black audiences are concerned about the lack of Black-owned media and are more likely to listen to talk radio that focuses on issues that impact the Black community. For some reason, the other talk stations haven't quite figured that out.
If you think about KFI, well, KFI only has like a 3% Black listenership. 3%. So there's a good 97% out there to support a station like KBLA.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your Black. Your Black. Your Black.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram at KBLA 1580.
Follow the leader.
Are you ready?
The station leading the way with exclusive interviews,
Follow the leader.
stimulating conversation, and intellectual discourse that empowers, enlightens, and informs.
Follow the leader.
Follow the leader at KBLA 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Keep following the leader.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar. Shot with a rest bar. Shot with a rest bar.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
Bounce is back.
Here comes the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show, weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head. Yeah.
This is a rather bold pronouncement, but we think we can back it up. If you come across a radio frequency anywhere putting more variety and more diversity on the air than KBLA Talk 1580, we sure would like to hear about your discovery.
You got to have vision.
You can search. We are confident that you won't find more shows covering more topics, hosted by a more diverse and inclusive lineup of talkers than the squad we have assembled here at KBLA Talk 1580.
This is the time, brothers. This is the time.
We've got something for everybody.
That's right.
Health and healing, history and humor, issues and events, empowerment and entertainment, all in one station.
What's really going on?
Free enterprise, you dig?
KBLA Talk 1580.
Yes.
Oh yeah. We got a lot to talk about.
King Kong ain't got on me.
If you're not listening to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings on KBLA.
All right, I am back, and in this hour, I am joined by Larry Cook. He is a presidential historian, and he is someone who has been very close to our former president, Jimmy Carter. Welcome to the show, Larry.
Thank you. Appreciate being here.
So, Larry, I want to start with George Washington, James Madison, and Thomas Jefferson. What do you imagine those founding fathers of our country would think about the federal indictment of a former president?
Well, I think they'd all be rolling around in their graves right now. I think they would think about it similarly to the way we all are thinking about it. It's an unprecedented thing. And I'm certain it's something that they would be very upset and discouraged about as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about what it means if Donald Trump is in fact convicted on any of these charges. Everyone is looking at the 37 charges thinking, oh my God, this is Florida. It's going to be a friendly jury. This Eileen Cannon judge is going to be friendly towards Trump. But the reality is he could be found guilty on 2 or 3 of the 37. And those charges alone could still mean that he could serve a considerable amount of time in jail. What does our Constitution, if it anticipates this at all, but what do you think the Constitution says or doesn't say about a former president that would have to do jail time? Let's start there. Then we're going to talk about a former president facing this legal jeopardy that's running for office again.
Yeah, again, and we hear it over and over again. It's unprecedented, and I think it's hard for any of us to imagine a former president being behind bars and all the logistics that would come with that. With he's afforded a lifetime of Secret Service protection for one, and how would that play out? Versus the security that's at the prison. So it would be a quagmire, to say the least, in any former president. And then, as you mentioned, with it being a presidential candidacy in there as well, that complicates it even further. I mean, in history, probably there's nothing that compares to this really at all, but just to go back in history a little bit, Eugene Debs ran for president in 1920 from a jail cell. He was a socialist candidate, and he ended up getting 1 million votes.
Wow.
And he ran in the 1920 election, the election that Warren Harding won. And Warren Harding ended up commuting Debs's sentence and meeting him at the White House, shortly after the sentence was commuted. I know Debs was not a former president, but he was a candidate in the Socialist Party, a third party. And so that's the closest we can come to making a comparison here. And he ended up being, the sentence got commuted by the newly elected president.
So, Larry, you hear a lot of experts say that perhaps we would not be in this predicament if Richard Nixon, if his case had been treated differently, if he had faced criminal charges, if he had gone through a trial, if he had been convicted, if we had set a precedent that no president is above the law, that perhaps that would have given Donald Trump, pause. Maybe he would have acted differently. I'm not certain. Donald Trump doesn't seem to, dance to the music that most folks dance to. So I'm not certain that would have made a difference. But what do you think of even that argument?
Well, that's correct. It would have definitely set a precedent. If it did happen, I guess you can look at it the other way. It didn't happen, and that's also a precedent. I really agree with what you said, that Donald Trump is not your typical person, not your typical president. I've got to say, from my own opinion, I don't think it would have made a big difference with President Trump. I think he would be playing it the same way.
Why do you think the Constitution doesn't disallow someone like this Eugene Debs or someone like Donald Trump, assuming he is convicted or incarcerated like Eugene Debs? What do you think the founding fathers were thinking when they basically said you can run for president if you're indicted, you can run for president if you are convicted, you can run for president if you are incarcerated?
Well, it's really not so much that they said you can if you're convicted. I don't even know if they thought of that, actually. It's just that there's nothing in the Constitution that prohibits you from running. Basically, you've got to be a natural born citizen and be 35 years of age. There is no other qualifications there. So it's not really that they said that, you could if you were thrown in jail or you were convicted of a crime or a felony, but it's just not in there that it's a restriction.
Right. There's not an affirmative. And you're right. I didn't mean to suggest that it affirmatively states that, but the omission of it basically acts as a pass, gives folks like Eugene Debs and Donald Trump a pass to move forward. Can you envision a scenario under which Donald Trump, if he is convicted and incarcerated, let's say, by some miraculous happening, he does win the presidency, what would happen? Do you anticipate he would then pardon himself while in jail? I mean, it's just kind of hard to wrap your brain around logistically what happens.
Yeah, believe me, I've thought of all these scenarios. You know, being a historian and a commentator, and it boggles your mind. Again, my personal opinion: if he were to continue the campaign, if he were to win, and he did that from a jail cell, or not from a jail cell, if it was still in litigation at the time, and he won, I would have to certainly guess he would attempt to pardon himself. There's another issue, in the Constitution that would be a constitutional question of whether he can do that or not. You listen to constitutional experts. Most of the ones I've listened to believe that he can. I believe myself he would do it. I mean, why wouldn't he? Why wouldn't he attempt to do it anyway? I think it would get challenged, all over the place. I think it may even go to the Supreme Court for, a clarification there. But I certainly think he would do it. Why wouldn't he?
Yeah, you're right. Most constitutional law scholars suggest that, it's a murky area. It hasn't been tested, obviously, at the Supreme Court level. And Donald Trump would just say, I'm going to do it, and let the lawyers fight about it. I mean, he would not be constrained by the fact that it's a, unanswered question, or there's some ambiguity around it. I guess everything that's happening with Donald Trump, Larry, raises the question about the country's ability to constrain someone like him, someone who flaunts the rules so, regularly as he does, and so brazenly as he does. What is our ability as a country to constrain him? Because one big question I've asked several of the pundits I've had on the show, how did the man get out the White House with 80 boxes to begin with? Like, how was that just humanly possible? And the only solution people have come up with is he's Donald Trump and he does whatever the hell he wants to do and nobody can stop him. When we come forward, I want to talk about what is in our Constitution or isn't in our Constitution that should be there that would allow us to be better prepared for someone as reckless as Donald Trump, to the extent that someone like him ends up in the White House again. When we come forward, KBLA Talk 1580.
Access granted.
In a survey conducted by the public opinion research firm Eviderus, KBLA Talk 1580 consistently emerged as the station of choice for Black audiences in the Los Angeles media market and beyond. The survey also revealed that the vast majority of Black audiences are concerned about the lack of Black-owned media and are more likely to listen to talk radio that focuses on issues that impact the Black community. For some reason, the other talk stations haven't quite figured that out.
If you think about KFI, well, KFI only has like a 3% Black listenership. 3%. So there's a good 97% out there to support a station like KBLA.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your Black. Your Black. Your Black.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram at KBLA 1580.
Follow the leader.
Are you ready?
The station leading the way with exclusive interviews,
Follow the leader.
stimulating conversation, and intellectual discourse that empowers, enlightens, and informs.
Follow the leader.
Follow the leader at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Keep following the leader.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
The bounce is back.
Pick up the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show, weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head.
This is a rather pronouncement, but we think we can back it up. If you come across a radio frequency anywhere putting more variety and more diversity on the air than KBLA Talk 1580, we sure would like to hear about your discovery.
You got to have vision.
You can search. We are confident that you won't find more shows covering more topics, hosted by a more diverse and inclusive lineup of talkers than the squad we have assembled here at KBLA Talk 1580.
This is the time, brothers. This is the time.
We've got something for everybody.
That's right.
Health and healing, history and humor, issues and events, empowerment and entertainment, all in one station.
What's really going on?
Free enterprise, you dig? KBLA Talk 1580.
Yes.
Oh yeah. We got a lot to talk about.
King Kong ain't got on me.
If you're not listening to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings on KBLA.
Larry, it seems like Donald Trump does not believe he has to follow any of the rules that the rest of the world has to follow, including the protocols that presidents before him, all of them before him, have followed, which begs the question about the Constitution and its silence on, holding a president accountable. I was asking the question about how did he walk out of the White House on his last day with 80 boxes, boxes that we now know contain some of the nation's top secrets. How come he wasn't stopped at the door? How come those documents weren't, taken out of those boxes? How is it that he was allowed to do that? And now we're on the back end having to issue a subpoena and FBI go in and search his home and now try to hold him accountable. It begs the question, if he were elected again, what control will we have over him, if any?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, who knows really how the boxes got out of there? The only thing that I can say is, when one administration ends and they're leaving, it's a hectic thing. There's multiple people working on the process of moving things out. As you mentioned, Donald Trump is he's a boss all the way around. I mean, as far as he gives an order, I'm sure it's going to be carried out by someone. It's kind of hard to constrain a person that's, the president, even on that last day of the presidency. Who knows how they got out of there with those classified documents in there. I mean, we have the Presidential Records Act, which was put into law in 1978. And, things have happened before. We've seen it in recent with others that have had documents, that got out of the White House that shouldn't have, and they got them back. And with the Presidential Records Act, usually that's a simple thing: is they're discovered and they're sent back, or they're requested for and they're sent back. But as you mentioned in Donald Trump's case, it seems anyway that he didn't want to do it that way, and so how do you constrain somebody like that? I think we kind of asked that question since even before Donald Trump was running for president.
And I mean, where does this put us from a historical standpoint? Someone that could, he says if he gets elected, he's going to pardon many of, if not all, of the insurrectionists. So we literally can have someone in office that says that all of the folks that we watch scale our Capitol walls, break into the Capitol, deface our Capitol, he would just open their jail cells and let them go. And again, presumably the country would have no recourse.
Well, I mean, if he were the sitting president, he certainly could do that, from a historic and constitutional, point of view. I'm with you on that. I'm not fond of that by any stretch of the imagination. But again, the powers of the presidency allow certain things as per the Constitution. And yes, he certainly could do that. I think that, I think that people, whether they like Donald Trump or they don't like Donald Trump, him and other candidates, you need to listen very carefully to what they do have to say, because I think statements like that should make a difference in how you vote.
But where are the checks and balances? I guess I'll go back to history, to the founding fathers. Was there some notion was it just a naive assumption that presidents, the people who would make it to the top of their parties, that would be voted on by the people, who would be elected by the Electoral College, would just be conformists? Because it seems like, in this era of Donald Trump, we need to really revisit the amount of power that we are conveying to, i.e., the individual we elect as president.
Yeah, possibly. But, I'm not sure, we go back to the beginning of our conversation there. We're talking about the founding fathers. I'm not really sure they envisioned something like this happening, as we mentioned, and certainly didn't envision a Donald Trump, and certainly couldn't make provisions for every possible thing when they're doing the Constitution, formulating the Constitution, of course. But yeah, I think something of this nature probably was never even imagined. I mean, all of us today say, you wake up almost every day and listen to the news and say you can't make this stuff up. You can't imagine. If you tried to imagine this, it's like watching a movie.
Right, a pretty bad one,
yeah.
to say the least.
Yes.
So, to constrain a future Donald Trump that may get elected into office, would it take a constitutional amendment, which we know can be, challenging and quite impossible in some ways?
Yeah, of course, it would take at least a constitutional amendment and maybe more than one, to check the powers of the presidency. The way, again, going back to our founding fathers, they formed the legislative branch, the judicial branch, the executive branch, and I think that was their hope, that we would have a check on the president in there. Again, not ever realizing something like this would be going on some 200 plus years later. But yeah, it would definitely take a constitutional amendment, if not more than one.
When you think historically about presidents, good and bad presidents, other than Richard Nixon, is there anyone, in the 200 years that come close to engaging in the kind of conduct that Donald Trump has? Maybe not the criminal conduct, but I'm just trying to think, where will he be placed in the history of U.S. presidents?
I think he's going to be placed pretty much all by himself. I mean, it's gotten beyond Richard Nixon at this point. I mean, we always use Watergate as our basis for everything. And now, when you see what's going on today, it's almost, I hate to use the word laughable because there's nothing funny about it, but it is almost laughable to compare Watergate at this point. And that was the standard for years and years. As far as other presidents through history, again, I don't, we've never had one indicted, especially on federal charges, especially on 37 federal charges, not even one federal charge has any other president been charged with. But, of course, you had scandals throughout history. I mean, we mentioned Warren Harding early on in this talk, and he had the Teapot Dome scandal, and you had Ulysses Grant that was plagued with several scandals. But, in both of those cases, they were really just surrounding themselves with people that caused problems. They themselves probably weren't, and who knows, you're not there behind the doors, but, they probably weren't, according to history, involved in the scandals themselves. But being the boss, they're responsible, of course. So, those are the two that come to my mind that were plagued in scandals, had things, had Warren Harding, for example, not died in office, he would have had big problems coming down the road.
What were the scandals of Harding and Grant?
Well, there were, in short, they were both with people around them doing scandalous things, taking bribes, doing that type of thing, people in their administrations.
So financial scandals, people in their administration who were involved in some kind of financial scandals.
Pretty much, yes.
So You have Harding, you have Ulysses Grant, obviously Richard Nixon, and then you have Donald Trump. I know you're good friends with former President Jimmy Carter, who you told me before the show is resting comfortably around family and friends. What do you imagine the Jimmy Carters, the George Bush, the Barack Obama, the Clintons, those living presidents, what do you imagine they are saying about Donald Trump's conduct?
I really don't know. I have not talked to any of them about that, including my friend Jimmy Carter. I have not talked to him about Donald Trump at all, of course. But, I imagine that they're all concerned just like the rest of us are. They're citizens of this great country, just like the rest of us. They're human beings. I'm certain that all of our former presidents have a different perspective, seeing that they were sitting in the Oval Office at one time. But I think that they probably share all the same emotions that all of us share, that this is sad for the country.
Wow. And there's no precedent that you are aware of where there's been, obviously the only way to remove a president is by impeachment. And we saw that happen with Donald Trump. He's twice impeached, but without that 2/3 vote in the Senate, he was never removed. And that's the only way the Constitution allows for the removal of a president.
Well, that, and if they're unfit for office, we've seen that, that get mentioned several times before, invoking that amendment. But that would be the only other way.
All right. Well, thank you, Larry, for helping us put in perspective just how dire this Donald Trump's presidency has been, and what it portends in terms of the future, which basically means if he wins, we're stuck with him, which is, to your earlier point, why everyone needs to understand the seriousness of this so that he doesn't win. Thank you so much for joining me in this hour. All right, y'all, I am out of time. You want to continue this conversation? Follow me on all social media platforms at Areva Martin. The next voice that you hear will be Robin Ayers and the Raw Report when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Access granted.
In a survey conducted by the public opinion research firm Eviderus, KBLA Talk 1580 consistently emerged as the station of choice for Black audiences in the Los Angeles media market and beyond. The survey also revealed that the vast majority of Black audiences are concerned about the lack of Black-owned media and are more likely